And today, the first thing that I want to do is say a thank you. My channel reached 200 subscribers, and I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. And if you're watching this and you haven't, if you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Today's video is my July favorites. And I'm going to talk about the tarot and oracle cards that were on my tarot shelf in the month of July. And then I have a couple of books that I wanted to touch on as well. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And then don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell so you're notified every week when I upload a new video. I don't know where I want to start. As you've seen from some of my other videos, I have a pretty large collection of tarot cards and oracle cards too. And I like to switch it up every month just to keep things interesting. I'm also drawn to different cards based on my moods, what types of readings I want to do, that type of thing. So I'm just going to start off at the top. Here we go. And these are not in any particular order. But the first one I want to touch on is Hanson Roberts. This is a recent addition to my collection. This deck, I really like it. It comes in a small tuck box with just a tiny white book in there. Here is the back of these cards. And then here's what the deck looks like. And it's just, I believe it's like pen outlining, and then there's colored pencils that were used to color in all of the images. My favorite thing about this deck is the size. It's the perfect shuffle size for me with small hands. And it is, I'd say, about the length of a poker deck, and it's a little narrower than a deck of poker cards. I think this deck has a timeless quality to it. I don't feel like it's one of those decks that is a fad that's going to come and go. It's just a very classic deck that's been around for a while, and I can definitely highly recommend this one. So another one I've had for a while that I haven't really taken the time to dive into is Messages from the Guides, and this is from James Van Praagh, and this is an oracle deck. And this comes with, it comes in a really nice hard box, and it's got a good guidebook with it. And I've been working lately, I use this more for readings for myself rather than readings for others, and I've been working a lot more on my own personal spiritual journey and working with my guides a lot more, and that's what I've been using these cards for. There's the back of the deck. Sorry, my lights are reflecting badly here. And then you can see what some of the cards look like. These must be messages that your spirit guides are trying to tell you at the time. So release toxic relationships, never judge another, patience is a virtue. So you can kind of get the idea. These are all just messages, straight up messages. And there's a little bit of an image around the outside, so you can still draw on the energy of the images as well. But I've been finding these really helpful. And I'm actually going to touch on a book that came up in when I read the guidebook. It was mentioned in the guidebook by James Van Praagh, and I bought that book, and I'm going to share with you some of the things that I learned in that book as well. So the next deck that I have is the Happy Tarot, and this deck came up in, I did a video on hug decks, and that was a video response, and I'll link that so that you can watch that one if you want to. And this is, I've been reading with this deck a lot lately because it has such a positive energy. Here's what the back of the deck looks like, and it is reversible on the back. And then I'm just going to take you through some of these. Now, if you've ever seen the movie Wreck-It Ralph, it kind of has the vibe of that, and I love how silly and fun and happy the deck is. There's the Three of Hearts. It does still have the darker cards in it, and you can definitely get the message. There's the Devil card there. What else have I got here? Yeah. So you can definitely see the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery going on in this deck, so I do find it very easy to read. And I also find myself, when I'm doing a reading, especially when it's for myself or someone who's looking to have a positive and upbeat reading, it just adds some silliness to the reading and lightens things up. Especially lately, I've definitely felt the need for that energy in my readings. So the next one I've been reading with is another oracle deck. This is Monology. These are oracle cards. They come in a nice hardback oracle oracle box, and then there's a nice fat guidebook that comes with it. But again, like most of my guidebooks, now I would argue with the James Van Praagh one. I did spend some time reading that guidebook, and I really got some details out of it that I appreciated. I don't think I'll use it while I'm reading because there's enough on each of the cards to find out the message that I need to find out. And you'll see here's the back, the Monology cards. I really like that the finish as well as a matte rose petal finish. But you can see there's an image on there, and then there's also wording at the bottom. This deck is giving me a little bit of trouble. It is sticking together a little bit while I'm doing this, but I find that when I'm shuffling, it doesn't do that. But there's definitely zodiac references and the phases of the moon. But I'm appreciating using this deck. I typically use this in conjunction in a reading with a tarot deck, or sometimes I might pull one card for myself and throw that up on my bookshelf so that I can see that throughout the week. The next deck I wanted to share with you is the Radiant Rider-Waite, and this is in a tin. And here's what the back of the deck looks like. And these are really small cards as well. They're a little bit smaller than the Hanson Roberts card. You can see that there. This is the Hanson Roberts deck that I showed you earlier. And I find this one really easy to shuffle. It is a little narrow. I wish it was wider, but it's definitely a little bit smaller than a poker deck. But the card stock is just as thick as a typical US Games card stock. But the thing that I appreciate about this, it's just your standard Rider-Waite images, but I love the way they've been redrawn, and radiant is definitely a key word here. There's so much more energy in the cards. This is one of my favorite Rider-Waite-Smith decks that I read with. And you can see as we go through some of these images here, just the colors are just stunning, and I love how much more energy that brings to readings than you would find in a standard Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So the next one I have is one that's consistently been on my tarot shelf for years. This is the Sacred Traveler Oracle by Denise Lynn. And if you've watched any of my other videos, you won't be surprised to see this one. Again, like with my other Oracle decks, it's got a nice guidebook. I've actually, I confess, never read this. I've never felt the need to. I love the art of this deck. It's beautiful, and the messages on it. And I've never felt compelled to get more information because there's plenty of information here. I did actually color the edges to match the backs, but I love the mandala on there. And then I'll just show you. The artwork is very soft, warm tones, and there's a key phrase at the top and then additional wording at the bottom. But you can see, there you go. There is definitely some diversity in this deck here. I'm afraid the other decks that I've shared with you haven't had much diversity in them. But this one definitely takes from multiple religions and multiple cultures from around the world. And I appreciate that. The thing I like the most about the Sacred Traveler is it's just such a supportive and warm, nurturing deck. And again, I've really felt the need for that type of energy right now. So I think that's mainly why I'm drawn to this deck. It's very upbeat and positive and supportive. And I find that when I'm doing readings, often that is, those are energies that the person I'm reading for needs, or if I'm doing a reading for myself, it's very supportive. It feels very kind and gentle, and I definitely appreciate that. So another deck of cards that I have that I got recently, it's a Rider-Waite-Smith based deck. Here's what the box looks like, and this is the Manned, a limited version of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot. And as with all my videos, I'll put links to all of the cards that I'm sharing down below in the description. So if you wanted to go see what any of these are, how much they cost, or anything like that, if you wanted to buy them for yourself, then you can do that. So here is what the back of this deck looks like. I have actually trimmed it. There was a border around this that was this mint colored here, and the cardstock is really thick. So I had a hard time shuffling this because the cardstock was so thick, and because the cards have, I can show you the reflection, they have a high gloss finish on them, so they're a little slippery and they're thick. So it was hard to hold on to. So now that I've trimmed the edges a little bit, I definitely have an easier time shuffling these, and I love this deck. So the coloring on the back isn't super fantastic, but again, this image right here, I love so much that it kind of compensates for some of the coloring on the other side. But let me just flip through some of these. You'll see. Recognize these of the Rider-Waite-Smith. The yellow is a little glaring, but again, I don't seem to mind it. I seem to mind that very much. Okay, so this deck is also a recent addition to my collection. I want to get the little mini book out and show you. This is the Psychic Tarot Oracle deck. And I find this one, it's definitely an oracle deck, but it is based very strongly in Rider-Waite-Smith. And it has the 4 suits, but it doesn't have cards, starting with 10 and the suits. And then it also has an additional 7 cards on top of that, so that it can cover all of your chakras. So you've got the major arcana as well, all 22 of those cards. And then this book here is good. I appreciate he's got mention of the, and this is by John Holland, he's got mention of how he uses color, the use of color, and also numerology in his deck, and that's interesting to see that. And then also just reading through it, I mean, there's no earth-shattering information in here, but I did find this guidebook interesting. It gives you a little bit of a background about the cards and why they're set up the way they are, which is interesting. And this is such I was really spiritually drawn to buy this deck. I had been for a long time, and I finally went ahead and bought it. I'm so glad I did. Let me show you some of the cards here. The size of this, here's what the back of the deck looks like. The size of this is your standard oracle size, and there is some racial diversity in this deck as well. But I find it really links closely. Definite, the 2 of Cups there. Definite links to all of the cards in the Rider-Waite-Smith who are represented here, and then you won't find the court cards, like I said, but it's very closely linked to Rider-Waite-Smith, and I find it really easy to read, and it's so accurate and very deep, and I have a really easy time reading this deck, and I really appreciate it. The last deck I have on my list is the Rider-Waite Tarot, and this is a smaller deck as well. This actually came out of the kit, which I've also shared. Sorry, that's loud. This came out of a kit which I've shared on my channel before. This is the complete tarot kit. I got this as a package deal. Wasn't super interested in it, but I ended up loving it. These are your standard Rider-Waite-Smith images. And the colors in this deck are a little more muted, but again, I'm so drawn. The longer that I read, the more drawn I am to the smaller cards, just because I love how comfortable they feel in my hands. And so I just keep getting those cards. So those are my cards for the month. And then I wanted to share a couple books with you. So the first book I worked through this month is the 10 Cosmic Dimensions by Raven Shambhala. And it's a spiritual guidebook to ascension. She has her MS in counseling. She used to be a counselor. She also was a yoga teacher and has Christianity in her background. So she's got this interesting melding of various worlds in her background that present themselves in the book in an interesting way. And I'm just going to read you the back of this. It says, Raven brings forward information on the soul's journey, life between lives, the light realms, and the effect of karma as we progress on our journey. Light workers have volunteered to be present on Earth during this difficult time in our history. All are invited to participate in bringing light to the world. This spiritual guidebook to ascension provides tools for evaluating your spiritual evolution and helping you to understand others in a new light. 10 worksheets are provided for self-reflections and to assist you in moving through the guidebook. So there's a lot of things in this guidebook that she presents that I haven't ever seen anywhere else, which I find very interesting. I also like that there's what I've been doing is journaling with this book. So I have found the need lately to really focus on my spirituality. So what I've been doing is, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I just get up and get out of bed. I used to lay on my phone and play with my phone for a while the house was quiet, but I'm awake anyways. I just decided I wanted to take advantage of that time. So I just get up and I go into a quiet place in the house while everyone else is still asleep, just a quiet corner in the house. And I usually will spend some time, I'll sit down, and I've been working through, I finished working through this guidebook. I have another one that I've just started as well. And I spend some time reflecting on myself and seeing where I'd like to work and focus my energy. This book asked me a lot of questions and had me consider things that had never even occurred to me to think about before, which I definitely appreciated, and also presented things in a way that definitely I felt enlightened and felt like I have some new perspective on things that I hadn't considered before. So I can definitely recommend this book. So I would spend some time reflecting and journaling answers to the questions in this book and thinking about those. And then after I did that, I journal for 15-20 minutes, sometimes as long as half an hour, just however long I felt like I needed to. I would spend some time meditating, and then I would spend a little bit of time reading something new, learning something new, reading a book. And one of the books that I read, I've read more than these books. These are the ones that just kind of stand out a little bit to me. Some of them are spiritual, some of them are just for fun. But one of the things that I read after meditating that I started reading through was that other book that I mentioned, James Van Praagh talked about. It's called The Ghosts Among Us. And I've been feeling called to learn more about mediumship and connecting to ghosts and spirits. It's something that I've always had in my life, have really tried to avoid, stop it from happening. I'm feeling more and more drawn to needing to have some more tools around controlling that, and have started spending some time researching how mediumship works, trying to decide what I want to do with that. And this is one of the books I decided to buy to get some additional insight on that journey. There was several things that were interesting that came up in this book. And one of the things that James presented was that whatever religion you are, when you leave this earth, whatever idea of heaven or afterlife that you have, they all exist. And I know when I was younger, one of the things I struggled with as far as religion goes, and I took some religious studies classes in college trying to get some more insight there, was trying to figure out which religion was right. Who's right? According to somebody on the planet, pretty much everybody on the planet's going to hell according to somebody. And then there's all these different gods and belief systems. How do you know which one's right? A lot of them just come down to faith and what you believe. I always kind of struggled to figure out, I think I really believed that only one of them could be right, but how do you know which one is right? I've kind of moved on from that, and definitely I've never been very religious, but I've always been very spiritual. And having James present that all of these places exist and that they have to do with frequency. I've brought up before in some of my other calls, if you're listening to music at 432 megahertz, you can type in 432 on YouTube, type in those three numbers, and you'll see a bunch of things come up at 432 megahertz. And that's a specific frequency that a lot of music, you can talk about French Gregorian chants or other music for meditation to help raise your vibration, that you can focus on those vibrations to help raise your frequency and make you feel better. What James presents, and he just makes a very short reference to it, is that based on the religion that you are and what your spiritual beliefs are, people of a similar belief system as you vibrate at a particular frequency, and everybody who has those similar beliefs vibrates at the same, they're all in the same frequency. So when they transition from this life to the next one, they go to where they're drawn to go based on the frequency where they are. And all of those different religions and their afterlives are represented based on the frequency that they have. And I just thought that was fascinating. It's the first time that I've ever heard someone suggest that all of these religious beliefs and all of these representations of afterlife exist. So that was interesting to hear that. And then another thing that I liked about this book, he has some different techniques in the back of the book about how to protect yourself. The one that I really appreciated the most was having to do with energy cleansing and clearing negative energy from your body. You basically will sit to meditate and you imagine your spiritual being taking a step back from your physical being. So you're standing behind yourself, looking at yourself, and you're looking for any dark areas in your body where your chakras may, there may be some dark energy hovering, and you're picturing that in your mind's eye. And I could very clearly see some areas in my body when I was meditating using this technique that I needed to clear the energy. And when I focused on clearing the energy in those areas, when I was done meditating in that way, and you take your time with it, I found it very effective. A really useful tool in my toolkit. And I like to keep things interesting with my meditation, because when I keep doing the same thing over and over again, sometimes I find that I don't have to be as present because I'm doing the same thing that I'm doing over and over again. So I can kind of start to check out a little bit and not be so present and focused on what I'm doing. So I like to keep things interesting and change it up. And he has several other techniques in here that I haven't used before. They reminded me of ones that I'd forgotten about, or were new techniques that I hadn't seen before. So I definitely appreciated that about these books. More than, he's got a lot of ghost stories in here too, and his interactions with the spiritual world. But what I appreciated more than those stories were those items that I shared with you. That is my updates from the month of July, and I'm so happy that you came here on my journey with me. If you have any decks that you use that you'd like to recommend I check out, please feel free to leave comments there, or any books that you've seen. Or if you'd like to see a full walkthrough on any of these that I haven't done on my channel, feel free to leave me a comment there. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you on the next time.